Figure it's like field stripping a weapon, just repetition, repetition.
Is to be. you yourselves can be perceived as a universe. One does naturally argue on what is the universe and what it is. The universe is a mere perception of understanding a selective portion of the infinite, where the infinite is categorized in branes, or even seen as levels or positions in a never-ending fractal. Such as a photon can be a universe when looking to identify things and analyze things on simpler level of quantizing the infinite. An atom itself can be identified as a universe too, even a planet. A universe contains a universal field. The universal field, which people call the aura, is shaped like a donut and is the same as the field around a galaxy, a planet, an atom, an electron, a quark, a photon, the same for a person. Very easily dismiss light as being energy only, when the matter of the fact it truly possesses mass by its observed gravitational properties. Energy is the vibration of stuff, particles and things. Energy cannot exist without stuff, and stuff cannot exist without energy, as there is the need of continuous spin, which can easily be represented as a swastika. So when the Real Society says that the swastika represents the energy of the black sun, they fail to understand that the energy cannot exist without the vibration of smaller black suns and so on, which can be represented by a fractal if interconnecting swastikas. Atoms are continuously absorbing and releasing photons, and are obvious when processing electrons through a medium such as a filament, in a light bulb, which released the part of themselves as photons. Photons themselves are the smallest known bosons that exist, and not imaginary or virtual. Photons themselves have their own gravity, and thus, when they have their own gravity, they have their own minute mass and 0 point an internal vacuum or many black holes in their epicenters. Because they have their own mass as observed by having their own gravity, they themselves are made up with smaller particles which would relate somewhere in the infinitely large. No one knows for sure what a universe is, but it is obvious that the universe itself is a brane of infinity, this immense fractal of existence which extends through to the infinitely large and the infinitely small, and not only that but as well extending through the three-dimensional space of a selected brane of infinity known as the universe as it is observed.
If you have children, please, if they go to school, they're all going to get told that the solar system looks something like this. Let me try to erase this. Okay, that the solar system looks something like this. That the sun is in the middle, and the solar system, and in my school, we even had a little machine with a little thing, a little crank you spun, and the earth went around the sun with the moon. This matter is equivalent to thinking that the Earth is flat. The solar system does not behave that way at all. In fact, the solar system it behaves in a completely different way, since the sun is moving through space and the planets are flying around the sun, generating these huge vortices as it follows the equator of the sun. That is a completely different picture. All right? It goes from flat to spacious, to movement through space. And that makes a big difference. All of a sudden, you start to see that even planetary motions, solar motions around the galaxy, galactic motions, supercluster motions, and so on, all have this elliptical, vorticular dynamics of space. They all have this torque dynamic through space. And source of the spin of all things. And that is an appropriate way to actually describe physics of angular momentum in the universe. So when we add torque to space-time, the solution gives us a very different picture than a perfect sphere. It generates a torus structure, okay? Which is a sphere with two holes in the middle at the north and south pole. And because it has Coriolis forces are the forces that makes water rotate in one direction in the north hemisphere and in the other in the south hemisphere, that makes hurricanes rotate in the opposite direction, that makes plasma dynamics on the sun rotate in the opposite direction. Because Coriolis forces were added to the equation, so what we did is we added a term for torque and the Coriolis forces as a secondary rank tensor on the space-time manifold. The result is a double torus structure, a double torus manifold that has this dynamic, which is viewed here from above as a rotating yin-yang.
That is, photons have mass, observed by their own gravity in reality. That they are the smallest existing bosons, and that the hologram universe theory supports it, even though photons themselves are not the end of infinity, since they themselves are made of smaller particles in continuous vibration and spin, which the hologram universe theory fails to observe. Photons themselves are the sixth Platonic solid, and cannot be seen or its geometric patterns observed in 3D space perspective, but in a multidimensional tesseractic form of geometry, which in itself reflects the fractal nature of infinity. People label photons as being God as well, ironically, when they say God is light. There are so many things that people have named God. In some extent they even say God is everything, that would be calling infinity as God, where the matter of the fact infinity isn't an entity. People call the source of observed manufacture of things in this universe brain as being God, when it is actually a zero-point vacuum of space, in other words a black hole. This just don't fall into black holes and remain in them, they are recycled. The galaxy, for example, has a center black hole, where some people call the source. Stars and things eventually fall into it, but the components of stars and things are ejected. They clump over very long periods of time, forming atoms, then stars, planets, and so on, which slowly drift back to the source again. The edges of the galaxy are mostly of young stars, and as you move to the center the stars in general age. bar this motion is toroid, so is your aura, so is the spin of electrons around an atom, so is the spin of particles in bosons, so is the spin of the organic-looking mesh of galaxy clusters in the universe. This toroid spin can be symbolized as a swastika, and the attraction and repulsive forces in the flower of life, or hexagram, or also known as the Star of David.